Madam Chair, Commissioners, Lead Counsel, Assistant Counsels, audience viewers, good morning to you all. Madam Chair, may I now yield the floor to you for our next item on our agenda for the day. Thank you.
Good morning to you all. May I now call on Honorable Sila to lead us in the Muslim prayers and Honorable Joyner to do so in the Christian way. Thank you.
Thank you.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, Amen. Holy Father, our blessed Redeemer, thanking you for waking us up to witness yet another wonderful day. It is by your mercy and grace that we are alive. Guide us as we journey on. We don't know what is ahead of us, but we believe that with you on our side, every obstacle and barriers will bow down and give way. You are great, Lord. Be our strength in the hour of weakness, and may your divine grace continue to abide with us today and forevermore. Amen.
Registrar, can you call in the witness, please? Thank you.
Good morning and welcome, Mr. Witness. Please sit down. Mr. Witness, may I remind you that you are still under oath.
Okay.
In so doing, may I now have the honor to pass the floor to Madam Chair. Madam Chair, over to you.
Good morning, Mr. TAMBURA. You're welcome back. Council, can you?
Good morning. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, and good morning, Honorable Commissioners. Mr. TAMBURA, how are you?
I'm okay, Council.
Yes. Yesterday we dealt with the compliance review reports for BCC.
Yes, Council.
Yes. Today I will want us to discuss the 2019 compliance review for KMC. Can you please refer to your notes with respect to 2019 report?
Yes, Council.
Are you there already?
Yes, Council.
Yes, please turn to page 8. Where one of your observations, which you highlight as non-compliance, is in relation to having the procurement unit under the Department of Administration. You found that to be very incorrect. And so, can you explain to us why?
Thank you, Council. The procurement law requires that the SPU, particularly the head of the SPU, should be under the direct supervision of the accounting officer, directly answerable to the accounting officer. In the case of BCC, this wasn't the case. It was discovered that as per their organogram, the head of the SPU was answerable and under the direct supervision of the administration department.
What are the implications when you have the procurement unit being under the Department of Administration?
Essentially, procurement is a very sensitive activity. That's why the expectation is whoever is involved in its conduct should have a kind of an independent and assurance that other departments whatsoever cannot in any way make influence on his procurement activity. It's just a kind of quality assurance for the officer in charge of procurement to ensure that he is not answerable to different heads of department, different institutions, so that he deals with the accounting officer who is also the approving officer.
So, according to your findings,
Yes.
when you have the procurement unit being under the Department of Administration,
Yes.
that may lead to conflict of interest,
Very possible.
and also there is a risk that the procurement unit may not be independent in their operation.
Yeah, that's the independence I'm talking about.
Yes, please explain further why it may lead to a conflict of interest and how it may affect independence in decision making.
Yeah, because first the head of the department, administration himself is answerable to the head of the institution. So if the head of the institution directs the procurement officer, at the same time the head of the administration directs the procurement officer, what does he do? He is in a dilemma, in a very funny situation. That's why the law requires that he takes orders directly from an individual who is the accounting officer, because there could be potentially a conflict. Because if I am answerable to the head of department for administration, but naturally answerable to the head of the institution, if they give conflicting roles, where do I stand?
Very well. Now, let's talk about the SPU, that is the Special Procurement Unit,
Okay.
under page 12. On page 12,
Yeah. Okay.
where you found non-compliance issues. What are those issues?
I guess that's under the functions of the SPU.
Yes. One of the points are that the SPU does not include evaluation criteria in the solicitation of quotations from potential suppliers.
Basically, the non-compliant issue highlighted by the reports, of course, includes the non-generation of evaluation criteria, which we think is very essential, because the evaluation criteria are the determinant of responsiveness to any procurement activity. If that is absent, it means your basis for evaluation would be nil. Secondly, we also discovered, because the procurement law requires that the SPU, members of the SPU should be well trained in public procurement. In the case of BCC, during the year under review, this was to some extent.
This KMC.
Sorry. In the case of KMC, this was really lacking.
Now, when you have the SPU not conducting evaluation or, let's say, performing their functions in accordance with the laid down rules or regulations, what would you say would be the implication?
Basically, there is the issue of transparency, because if you are not functioning as per laid down rules, the issue of transparency comes, the issue of fair play comes.
When you visited KMC, in relation to the contracts committee, who were the members at the time in 2019? You may make reference to page 13.
Yes, as per the report, the membership are as follow: Mrs. Senabu Martin, the CEO; Mrs. Senabu Martin Sonko, the CEO; Mr. Abdullah Kebe, Vice Chairman of the Contracts Committee; Mrs. Fatima Saho, the Procurement Manager. We have Mr. Dembo Bari. His designation wasn't included, but Mrs. Binta Jane Jalo, a councillor; Mr. Musa Ba, Deputy Mayor; Dr. Aliu Keta, Director of Finance; Mrs. Nima Kamara, Director of Planning and Development; Mr. Philip Spencer, Director of Services; and Mr. Usman Gay, Clerk of the Council.
At the time, were you receiving monthly reports from the Contracts Committee?
Which page are you?
2019. I mean, whether you can recall whether they were in compliance with respect to their monthly returns.
Yeah, yes. I want to confine myself to the report. I just want to see what exactly has the report showed here. Are you making any reference to any particular page?
No, on page 13, you outlined that, of course, one of their functions is to make sure that they submit monthly reports to the authority.
Yes. The observation on the submission was basically on the procurement plan.
Yes.
That wasn't submitted.
Now, on page 14,
yes,
there were also non-compliance issues with respect to the Contracts Committee.
Page 14, yes.
Yes. Please guide us through those non-compliance issues.
Yes, we expect that the Contracts Committee, or as part of their functions, the Contracts Committee is expected to be consolidating their reports by way of monthly annual procurement plans submitted to GPPA. This was absent in this case. Also, initially we said, as a Contracts Committee, they have to ensure all procurements evaluations are generated. This was also absent in the case of KMC. Secondly, there was no formal appointment. There was no evidence of formal appointment of members of the Contracts Committee in the case of KMC for the period under review.
Now, so as far as your report is concerned, with respect to the Contracts Committee, you realize that the committee does not generate evaluation report as well in these situations.
Sure.
And that the annual procurement plan was not submitted to the authority.
Right.
In fact, even the cases of evaluation criteria were not being met.
We are not generated.
So, in short, the implications, as far as you're concerned, is that this may, there's a lack of evaluation criteria, which makes award decisions subjective.
Indeed. If evaluation criteria are not set forth in the solicitation documents, where do you base your award decision? Where do you base responsiveness of economic operators? So
by subjective, by decisions being subjective, what do you mean?
Basically being biased.
So that is to target a particular supplier, for example?
Not actually targeting, but the decision you have taken,
yes,
may not be responsive or may not be in line with the evaluation criteria because they are absent. So your decision would be baseless as per the procurement law.
Yes, no, I'm just going by your very word, which you say, you were saying that in short, that will encourage biasness.
Yes.
And so if you are biased in a certain situation when you're supposed to, let's say, have an open playing field, yes, then you're giving preference to probably one or two suppliers as opposed to having a level playing field.
Yes, let me put it this way. The decision would be discretionary.
Yes. So when you say there's a tendency of being biased, can you please simplify that?
No, here I think the writings are very clear on the wall, because in any procurement, you are expected to follow the sequence. And one of the sequence or steps is evaluation generation of evaluation. The purpose of evaluation is to determine responsiveness and to determine strength and weaknesses. The responsiveness, the strength, weaknesses should be based on the evaluation criteria. Therefore, if the evaluation criteria is absent, what are you telling people? How do you arrive at your decision? So the decision is not based on laid down criteria. Your determination for responsiveness is not based on laid down criteria. So naturally, it will be based on discretion or any other unforeseen reason.
Now, on page 18, there's a table where you illustrated the various types of procurement or methods of procurement. And you will see that for open national tender, there was one transaction, and the amount is 8 million. Is it 8,500,000?
Yes, Council.
And for restricted tendering, there were 3 transactions, and the amount is $8,919,650.
Yes, Council.
Single sourcing, 258 transactions.
Yes.
14 million is the value, $676,928.
Yes, Council.
And for request for quotation, 393 transactions. You have $44,880,660.
Yes, Council.
So the non-compliance issues were, you said we have observed the involvement of non-members of the SPU in conducting procurement.
Yes, Council.
Yes, please explain the implications when you have the wrong people or you don't have the right people conducting these transactions.
From the report, it was obvious that some members who are not part of the procurement unit took part in the conduct of certain procurements. And there was a specific reference to the environment and sanitation unit. So obviously this has implications, because the understanding is once we have members outside the procurement unit conducting procurement, one, it raises eyebrows. The issues of transparency can also be compromised. The whole procurement process, because we are not expecting experts in the procurement process. We don't expect non-expert in the procurement process to conduct procurement. But the fact that people outside the procurement is conducting procurement, doing a role which is not theirs, it raises eyebrows, potentially conflict of interest, just as I explained yesterday. And this can really compromise the whole situation, because it leads to, it's a violation of the act, and value for money may not be attained, because what it really takes to do a proper procurement may not be understood by these very people.
So the reference with respect to the Environment and Sanitation Unit,
yes,
for KMC in 2019, you are saying that you reference them because, in fact, it is an example of a situation wherein they conducted procurement activities without having the mandate to do so.
That's what the report is saying. So.
Now,
Council, may I ask?
yes.
Mr. TAMBURA, on the same page 18, you can realize that the issue of single sourcing again has come up.
Yes.
Which amounted, the total transactions which were 258, amounting to 14,676,928. 26. Is this the same explanation with what happened in Banjul City Council?
There could be some difference. I said clear yesterday here that the least desired method is single sourcing. However, we must also understand that it is a legal method of procurement. That's why it is provided for in the Act. However, in the case of BCC yesterday, there was a list of single sources whose value were above the threshold. In our review process, whether the single source was above the threshold or not, we'll always get them in our statistic here. However, if there are instances where the single sources conducted here, referred here, we have instances where some of the single sources are above the threshold, the report will highlight that. But if the report doesn't highlight that, it tells that the single sources conducted were within the threshold. So there could be a thin line of difference, because the fact that we mentioned single source, it doesn't mean it was above the threshold. Maybe it was a single source conducted within the threshold.
So in this instance, do you have the breakdown of all the single sources for us to understand whether they were below or above the threshold?
Yeah, that's what I say. If you check the report yesterday, BCC, we had the breakdown.
No, we are dealing with the
yes.
KMC today.
So that's why here, if the breakdown is not submitted, it means they were all within the threshold. That's the nature of our reporting.
Can we see the breakdown, please?
Okay.
Because, yesterday you elaborated and you really explained in detail. What is the threshold?
Yes.
The threshold is 20,000.
Yes, for goods and services.
For goods and services.
Yes.
So can you provide us with the transactional details of this 14 million?
Okay, ma, we'll endeavor to do so.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor, you can proceed.
Just to ask a quick question in relation to what the chairperson is trying to find out, Mr. Witness.
Yes.
You will see that if you turn to page 25, that is with respect to the specific procurement activities carried out. You are given sampling. You'll find that in chapter 4, page 25.
25.
You will see that there was a category of procurement activity on which is goods. The amount is $182,745.32 bututs, and the awarded contractor is Petrogas, and the procurement method is single source. But if you see the non-compliance findings,
yes,
you will see that number one, there were no minutes of the contracts committee approving the purchase as stipulated in the regulation. Yes. Are you following?
Yes, sir.
And the second point or issue that you have problem with is that the said procurement is above the single source threshold.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Please explain to us about this particular transaction.
Yes, exactly. I think I hinted this initially. I said normally once we mention the statistics in the case of KMC here, if there are any single source that are above the threshold, normally the report will highlight that. So notwithstanding, even if there is no composite report statistic highlighting the single source whose value are about the threshold, sometimes we go further to have specific findings. We random check to identify certain procurement. That's what led to this particular one. So the amount involved here is substantially above the threshold for single source, $182,745.32 bututs. So, and we all understand, we are all familiar with the basic concepts now. The threshold for single source, of course, because this is goods, is 20,000 and below. So it means here, this was a violation. That's why it is highlighted here. It's above the threshold for single source. Furthermore, the reason why it is highlighted also, it means the justification they have given at their level is not consistent with the provision of the Act.
In fact, in this situation, not only is the amount way more than the threshold, but then there were not, in fact, minutes of the contracts committee approving the transaction.
Yes. Naturally, even the method itself, all procurement method must be approved by the accounting officer vis-a-vis the contracts committee. But with particular reference to single source must be approved by the contracts committee, in fact, before you initiate it. So in this case, the fact that minutes were absent, it means the contracts committee has never started to discuss the issue, to even take a course of action.
Thank you. I was just asking that question in relation to the chairperson's question. So you spoke about the issues of transparency and the issues of conflict of interest in relation to page 18 when we are discussing the non-compliance issues.
Okay.
During the procurement transactions. How serious is a transparency issue and a potential conflict of interest in procurement activities?
Transparency is one of the fundamental principles of procurement. Aside, it is one of the objectives of the procurement law. Therefore, depending on the amount involved in the procurement transaction, you are expected to bring that planned procurement to the attention of all potential economic operators, either by advertisement or by other means, so that people are fully aware that this is a planned procurement about to happen. You can do this, of course, in different ways. One, by publication of your procurement planning. If these things are not done, it raises some concern, because the law requires that you have to observe transparency to some aspect. Failure to do this raises concern. Probably, you don't want the procurement to be known by all economic operators, because it's about fair play. If potential procurements are not publicized in procurement plans, etc., you are compromising the ease of transparency to some extent.
In fact, in addition to all these problems in the year 2019 in KMC, you found out that some of the files did not have receipts, goods received notes, notice of award and evaluation reports, among others.
Yes, sir.
Yes, so why is that a problem when there are no receipts or goods received notes?
Yes, because the good received notes are the supporting documents or evidence of receipt of the goods. So if this is absent, it means there is no evidence that the goods were actually delivered. As per our review, we could not have a trace. We could not be presented with anything to suggest that the goods were actually delivered.
Let me try to understand you. I think we have discussed this same problem with respect to BCC yesterday. So you have, let's say, procurement activity being conducted either through single sourcing or through RFQ, request for quotation, because these are the two main methods we find that are mostly used. So that in addition to all the non-compliance, procedural compliance with respect to the act or the regulation, or anti-regulation as well, when you are saying in some instances, you find that in fact a particular transaction which probably is being paid for, let's say for the purchase of laptops or vehicles or services, then the transaction has already been completed, but then there is no evidence that in fact these particular goods were being supplied or received by.
Yes, that's what the good received notes has come to solve, because it is the evidence that the goods were delivered. So if we could not have any trace of that evidence, so it means we could not ascertain.
So you are saying it is a procedure that when you supplied a particular good or service, in procurement, there should be a good receipt note.
There should be a good receipt notes.
Now, do you have a list of how many transactions were being conducted wherein there were no goods received notes? Would you have that in your records?
Yes, the working document should be able to capture that.
That is the files that you have sent?
No, not the files here.
The working document?
They have working documents. The team, those who are on the ground, they have working documents. Sometimes that's where they record some of these things.
If we request that, will we be able to have those that number of the transactions that have been conducted without having evidence of the goods or services being supplied?
I can endeavor to find out from the records.
No, it's not only a matter of endeavoring. If it exists, then we will want to have the list. Now we are making a request. We want to have the list of the transactions, the number of transactions, the type of transactions, and then wherein there were no receipts of the delivery of goods or services.
Yes, like what I'm saying is exactly this. Sometimes when we are in the field, we see this, we see the evidences. Sometimes we take copies and keep as part of our records. But sometimes once we are satisfied with what we have seen, we just record it and put it into a report. I'm not very sure whether copies were actually taken by those who were in the field. Understand? So, but however, I know all these things must be within the KMC. But whether actually records were actually extracted to establish this list, I wouldn't want to speculate.
No, it's not just to draw a list. It's not probably, maybe you don't have a list. If you are to arrive at the conclusion that goods received notes were not present in some situations, it means, I expect, as any professional, you have to back that up.
Exactly.
Naturally. I understand that some of these, some of the methods of procurement that you have, procurement review that you have conducted were done through sampling.
Yes.
So I'm not saying for all the transactions, but for the ones that you have sampled and you have noticed that certain transaction, there was no evidence to back a delivery being done.
Yes.
Then we will want to have evidence of that.
Okay.
Now, please turn to page 20. On page 20, under pre-qualification and registration of suppliers.
Yes.
We already discussed the requirements for pre-qualification and registration of suppliers yesterday and day before yesterday. In fact, throughout this week.
Yes.
There were non-compliance issues with respect to pre-qualifications.
Exactly.
Yes, please run us through the non-compliance issues.
Yeah, basically, the concentration here is on the registration of suppliers here, because the law requires that before you are awarded a contract, the current law, in fact, before you participate, you must register with the authority. I think we discussed that in details. So that's what the report is making reference to here.
Okay. Now,
so it means KMC, we expect all institutions to have a pre-qualified list within their institution. It's an institutional arrangement.
Yes.
So that in the event you want to go in for particular specialized or other procurements, you just refer yourself to the list to get this potential economic operators.
Thank you.
But that list must be
present,
consistent with what obtains at our records, GPPA.
Very well. Yeah. Now, on page...
Before you proceed, I have noted on the 2019 report that for all of the management issues,
yes,
the KMC was able to respond
yes,
to the queries you have raised.
yes.
And in page 20, in the management report, they have stated that they will submit to you in due course the activity work procurement plan. In any case, that was in 2021. When you went to do your review in 2022, was that submitted to you?
That's the annual procurement plan.
Yes.
They submitted
Because, yes, because we can see that for all the issues that you have raised,
Yes.
they have indicated the steps they have taken
Exactly.
to remedy some of the deficiencies and the defects that you have found and the non-compliance.
Exactly.
And in because this we are dealing with the 2019 report,
Yes.
and they have indicated that they were preparing in 2021. They would submit this activity, work, and procurement plan to your office.
Yes.
And they did?
They did that.
Oh.
They did that.
Because I did not see anywhere you responding to the fact that you were in receipt of what they have indicated that they will supply to you.
Yes. I think because this annual procurement plans are normally submitted on an annual basis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Now, on page, is it 221? The use of branding in procurement. Do you see that? Are you there now?
21?
Yes, page 21. You find that the review, the procurement proceedings reveal the use of brand names, example Sharp, HP, and etc.
Yes.
Yes, please explain further.
Just like I mentioned the other time, branding that's making specific reference to a particular brand is normally not encouraged in procurement because it distorts competition, because it potentially eliminates any other economic operator who does not deal in those particular brands. So that's why the law frowns in the use of branding, because we expect a level playing field to allow for genuine competition. But once you set in brands, it means you are potentially eliminating any economic operator who does not deal in those brands.
Now, there was one open national tender on page 18 that we discussed.
Yes.
But then before we go to the open national tender, the discussion we had yesterday with respect to trying to discourage or prohibit branding,
Yes.
is that it may possibly target one supplier or an individual supplier.
Those are one of the possibilities.
And so there may be the issues of biasness in relation to the award of contracts for supply of goods or services.
In relation to the procurement process itself.
So this is one of the problems that you find in this situation.
Yes, once brands are used, these are possibilities.
Now, open national tender, there was one, and the value is $8,500,000 on page 18.
Yes.
Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, when you were making your findings on page 22,
Page 22, yes.
you said that the team of reviewers could not verify any advertisement of tender opportunities because there was no proper filing system.
Yes.
Now, what are the requirements for, just again, just tell us what are the requirements for open tender, for tender?
For open tender?
Yes.
I told you is the most preferred method where procurement opportunities are open to all. Yes, this time it's open to all economic operators. And normally, one of the fundamental identification of an open tender is to ensure that there is advertisement. Advertisement in a newspaper, either print or electronic media of wider circulation, either national or international. This goes to explain what open tender is all about, and normally it doesn't have an upper threshold.
And again, You said there is no secured facility
Yes.
or tender box for the receipt of tenders, quotations from prospective suppliers for transparency purposes to be in line with GPPA.
Yes.
What is a tender facility or a tender box?
Normally, these are design stores, sort of, or boxes that are very secured with locks, so that in a procurement process, either regardless of the method that is used, the expectation is the tenderer or the economic operator will make his proposal and go straight and submit it or deposit it in that box, which is really sealed and secured, just to reduce personal contact directly and to ensure the bids submitted, the quotation submitted, or the proposal submitted are not tampered with before the bid opening.
Why is it a problem when someone has access to a particular bidding? Why must it be sealed?
Why was it not sealed?
No, why must it be sealed?
Exactly, yes. Because the fundamental fear is tampering. That's the fundamental fear, though it is very open, but tampering. Some institutions, we could not establish that in this case, but the fact that the facility was lacking, but the...
No, we will get there. First, I want us to understand, because there is a requirement that it has to be sealed, it has to be secured. When you have tenders being or bidding,
Yes.
all this process must be secured.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
And then probably we know what it means, why there is the need to have all this in place.
Yes.
But these findings are supposed to be in public. What we are discussing right now is in public, so everyone should understand why there is a particular regulation or a particular process. Now, when you say the facility was not secured, we want to understand, for example, what is the importance of having a secured facility in relation to concealing the identities, the informations of bidders, and so on and so forth?
Basically, the purpose of even this facility, where tenders or quotation or proposal are deposited, is purposely, fundamentally, to avoid tampering.
What do you mean by tampering?
Yes, to avoid tampering with the bid. Now,
No, what are the examples, or what do you mean by tampering?
Yes,
How can one tamper with bidding
yes.
processes?
Assuming if there are no facilities, these secure facilities, how do you submit your bids or quotation? Naturally, maybe by hand delivery. The fact that there are no boxes, where do you hand deliver? To whoever is the recipient.
Yes.
Therefore, practice has shown in certain jurisdictions globally,
Yes.
that sometimes if that is done, because there is always a deadline for the submission of bids.
Yes.
Let's say it's 12 o'clock. But if the deadline is 12 o'clock, a bidder has the right to submit before 12.
Yes.
You cannot submit after 12, but you can submit before 12. Now, if you submit a particular bid before 12, and somebody is waiting for 12, and it is hand delivery, there are chances, there are possibilities that bid can be unsealed, can be tampered, your information can be communicated to a bidder who has not yet submitted, but probably about to submit. So globally, these are practices that are discovered globally. That's why the law makes provision to avert such possibilities. That's why in most cases, if we don't see these facilities in institutions, we always encourage that you have these facilities.
So what you are trying to say is the reason for having or for making it mandatory to have a secured facility is to avoid tampering. And by tampering, one of the examples are that information of a particular bidder, for example, may not be shared with another bidder to award or give an advantage to another bidder. Is that what you're saying?
So, it's a possibility.
Now, and this will affect the integrity of the process?
If that is done, in fact, it means there is no procurement, there is no competition because already there is information leakage. If that happens, it means there is information leakage because most of the time, the reason for tampering bids and communicate these things to other potential suppliers is, of course, to give a competitive advantage. That's the only reason. Yeah, but globally, these are part of the malpractices in procurement globally. Yeah.
Please turn to page 23. Yes, please.
Sorry, Council. Before you go to 23, can you explain what you mean by Dutch auction and why you said the staff of the KMC should be discouraged to collect?
Which page, please?
22.
Okay.
Can you explain what you mean by Dutch auction and what you meant when you said staff of KMC should be discouraged to collect quotations from the suppliers to eliminate the risk?
You say 20?
22.
I want to get the context.
Yes.
Is it on the standard bidding documents?
Under recommendations, you said the last point under page 22, you said staff of the KMC should be discouraged to collect quotations from the suppliers to eliminate the risk of Dutch auction.
Yeah.
I wanted you to explain the term Dutch auction and why you said they should be discouraged from collecting quotations.
Basically, in this context here, the Dutch auction is trying to give different information to different, in other words, rumor mongering, trying to give different information to different suppliers. If, for example, we are all here gathered, you take quotations, somebody else take quotations, somebody else take quotations. How do we communicate to the suppliers? The information you give to a particular supplier may be different from the information I give that supplier, may be different from the information he gives that particular supplier. So there is a mismatch in terms of information. If that, and most of the time, if non-procurement officers go to collect quotation to individuals, that's what happens. At the end of the day, there is no level playing field.
Thank you. Thank you. Council, you can proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please turn to page 24.
No, you were at 23.
23, yes. I decided now to move to 24.
24.
Yes, the findings for with respect to the contracts management, the non-compliance. Do you see that?
Page 24.
Yes. 24
yes,
of
on the contract management, yes.
Yes, so the non-compliance, you said inspection and acceptance committees are not established as part of the contracts management for the procurement of goods and services.
Yes.
Yes, explain to us.
As part of the contract management, we said there is always the need for a receipt and examination committee. That's this inspection committee who should be there to verify that what is delivered is exactly what was requested. So in this instance, this was lacking, and therefore if there is a mismatch, it may not be discovered. The mismatch could be in terms of quality or in quantity.
Let's now discuss the findings in relation to specific procurement activities conducted in 2019 that you have sampled in this report. You can find that on page 25.
Yes.
We start with the procurement of an air conditioner. The category is goods. The amount is $15,000. The award contractor is Munas J Trading. The method used is request for quotation, RFQ, and there were non-compliance issues.
Yes.
Yes, please explain to us.
Yeah, the non-compliant issue are very similar to the one I initially explained.
Yes.
One, there is issue of branding. It's also indicated that there was no deadline set in the Form 101 for the submission of quotations, which is of course a concern because if the economic operators do not know what are the deadlines for you to submit your proposals. So it means it's a problem. When do you submit? And one can submit today, the other the next day, or this time, the other the next time. These are issues, and above all, there were no evaluation criteria. Therefore, what was the basis of their award decision?
So there's no evidence of a transparent process in this situation. So basically, like you have highlighted in numerous instances, there could be the tendency of bias or transparency because the evaluation criteria were not communicated to the potential suppliers.
That's what it suggests. Yeah.
Yes. No, in fact, that's what it explains clearly, based on your findings. Now, the second one is procurement of fuel. The category is goods. The amount is $182,745.32 buttons. The award contractor is Petrogas. I think we've already dealt with this one. With respect to single sourcing.
Yes.
So we move to the procurement of office equipment, $45,850. The contractors are BS Enterprise. And the method used is request for quotation.
Yes.
Tell us more about the non-compliance findings.
Very similar to the one we discussed initially, like no delivery receipt notes, which we just explained, which is very fundamental. And there was also the issue of branding, which is also an issue. So very similar to what we have just explained. And there was no an inspection committee to inspect the goods to ensure that there is no mismatch.
So in this instance, too, as well, it is one of the examples to show that a particular good or goods were purchased and no evidence of delivery. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the next one is the procurement of goods amounting to $123,050.
Yes.
From Arafat Trading. The method used is RFQ, request for quotation, and the non-compliance issues were came to use brand names, which in fact it's been prevailing throughout this report.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And there was no delivery receipt in the file. Again,
exactly.
in this instance.
Yes, we could not trace any delivery note.
And the issue of bias also came up. Let me say potential bias came up when you have lack of transparency because there were no evaluation criteria that should have been communicated to the suppliers.
Yes.
Now turn to page 27, where you have spare parts being procured.
Yes.
What is the amount?
The amount is $80,000.
The supplier.
Tomex Enterprise.
So this also an RFQ method.
Yes.
Please tell us the non-compliance findings.
It's a repetition of the other one. One, there was no delivery note. We could not trace any delivery notes. And also the Form 101 was not properly administered. So this time around it was administered but not properly administered. And there was no evidence to show that the item supplied was inspected to ensure, to avoid any mismatch.
Now, do you know whether in conducting this review, where these specific findings more of sampling, where you just take some samples, and not necessarily all the activities?
The specific findings are basically sampling. So,
which means there could be more situations or procurement conducted which probably fall under this category.
Yeah, simply because we could not sample all the transactions. Yeah.
So these are just a handful of
samples. Yeah.
Honorable Chairperson, if the commissioners have questions for 2019 for KMC, then we can allow the commissioners to ask questions before we move to the next report,
We can,
2020.
yes, we can go to the next. Oh, sorry. Do you have questions, Commissioner? Yes, we can go to.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Please refer to your notes with respect to 2020 for KMC.
Yes.
Now, of course, there were general findings on page 10 with respect to what the accounting officer should have done, and these things were not being done.
Yeah. Council, may I please ask?
Yes.
Mr. TAMBURA, at page 6 of the report,
Yes.
you have indicated at paragraph 1.11,
Yes.
the authority purposefully selected all the procurement proceedings for the year under review.
Yes.
This is referring to your authority, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Like what for the specific findings, normally we do sampling. He's referring to the review process here. Exactly so.
Now, let me now refer you back to page 7, so that we just first discuss the nature of the procurement method or methods that have been used in the year 2020.
Page 7.
Yes. Then we can now go on to the non-compliance issues.
All right.
How many open tender was conducted in 2020?
0.
How about two stated tendering?
0.
Request for proposal?
0.
And there was only one for restricted tendering, is that correct?
Yes, as per the report, yeah.
What is that value?
$2,496,100.
So you only sampled 7 transactions. Value of sample transactions?
As per the methods?
Yes.
Yes, as per the method.
So how about single sourcing? How many transactions?
247 transactions.
The value is $14,292,023.44 buttons.
Yes,
And for request for quotation, there were 164 transactions.
exactly.
The value is $7,641,624 is 9 buttons.
Yes.
So the total value for procurement in the year 2020, what is the amount?
$34,429,747.53 buttons.
That is for 2020.
2020, what I want to clarify.
Yes.
Yes. You know, in my first day and in subsequent days,
Yes.
I said these are post reviews.
Yes.
And the post review, the concentration is mostly
Yes.
on procurement that are not submitted to GPPA.
Yes.
Those that are submitted to GPPA are the files you see in the greens.
Yes.
So I want to make that clear.
Yes. We've already discussed that this procurement review are probably below $500,000 or 1 million.
In instances, sometimes it could be more than that.
Yes.
Yeah, because sometimes we may be interested in a particular transaction, and we follow it to some extent.
So in short, what you are saying is that the post-review procurement, the value or the amount of the amount in procuring goods or services, the amount is $34,429,747.
Yes.
But that's only for
Post-review.
For post-review.
Review.
But then the amount will, of course, naturally substantially increase.
Yes.
When we now review procurement, mostly in the tune of 1 million up.
Yes, because if you check yesterday the list we have from KMC, for example.
Yes.
You realize that most of that list is not reflected here.
Is what?
It's not reflected here.
Exactly.
Yeah. So normally,
Yes.
it is always categorized, the post-review and the prior review.
Yes,
So
no, it is good to have that clear. I think we have already discussed this in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes, so just before we move on, this is the amount with respect to the post-review for KMC 2020.
Exactly so.
Now, let me refer you to page 12. Where you have the KMC procurement.
Can you, Mr. Tambura, can you please explain you do the prior review is where you conduct the reviews.
Yes. The prior reviews is where we conduct reviews of transactions that are submitted to the authority at every stage of the procurement proceedings.
Okay. What about the post?
Those are the transactions, the transactions that are normally handled at the institutional level. By the end of the year, 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months after the end of the year, we go and review them. But in that process, sometimes we may be interested to follow either 1 or 2 transactions that we had already dealt with in the past.
So during the course of your findings, which of the 2 do the institutions use in terms of transaction, mostly?
Can you please explain that?
Okay, let me put it this way. You know, you do prior and post.
Yes.
And in post, that is where the institutions themselves do all these transactions. And sometimes they don't need to come to the authority because they are mandated under the Act to do certain things.
Exactly.
Most particularly, the 2 major forms,
yes.
That is
single source and
SS
RFQ. Yes.
and RFQ.
Exactly.
So my question is, in this situation, which ones do the authority see to realize that the transaction is heavily, geared towards this form of transaction than the other one?
I didn't get you clear, Chair.
Oh, okay.
I didn't get you.
Maybe I'm not a technical person in this one. I'm just trying to understand, because what I have seen in the report, what I'm understanding from the report is that institutions opt to use single source and RFQ mostly
okay.
in doing their transactions.
Okay.
And based on the regulation and the Act, you are always pointing out the fact that it is always preferable to use things like open tender,
yes.
get approval from your office to do these transactions because it's more transparent, it's more fairer, it is more open, and it limits the issue of bias and all that stuff.
Okay.
So I am saying, what does the institutions prefer? Do they prefer? Yes. Did you get it now?
Yes. At this point in time, it will be very difficult on my side to speak on behalf of the institution as to their preference.
No, it's based on your findings, because you would see the trend. It's
Yes.
the trend that, because what you are doing based on the findings and based on what we have seen in the report, you are always trying to get the institution to say, look, what you are doing is not in compliance with the rule, it's not in compliance with the Act, so please can you do it that way? So it is not hypothesis or what you believe, it's what you have seen. That is what I'm asking.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The trend so far has revealed that the most commonly used methods by local government authorities, in particular, and by extension institution, is the single source and the request for quotations. It's the most commonly used methods. Sometimes the methods are used, adopted, and the process are followed. Sometimes the methods are used when the process are not followed to the latter. But to answer your question, the most commonly used methods by institutions including local government authorities, is the RFQ and the request for quotations.
Thank you.
Now,
You can proceed.
another finding on page 12 with respect to this SPU, that is the Specialized Procurement Unit, is that the SPU does not include evaluation criteria in the solicitation of quotations from potential suppliers in RFQ transactions. Do you see that? Yes, page 12.
Okay.
Please explain to us your non-compliance findings.
Basically, it's about the evaluation criteria, which was initially explained. I said these are the basis for determination of responsiveness and award decisions. The fact that they are absent, that's evaluation criteria, the fact that they are absent, it suggests that your award decision or the determination of responsiveness was not laid down as part of your requirements.
And so this will also affect the transparency of the process?
Yeah, the decision could be very discretionary in nature.
And on page 15, please.
Counsel, before you proceed on page 15. Mr. Tambura, how do you reconcile the issue of branding with section 44, restricted tendering, subsection 2A? The reason why I am asking question is because you have made findings in the report in 2020 that there are some non-compliance with the Act. So, but then if you look at restricted tendering and you look at the provision subsection 2A, how do you reconcile the two?
Like branding generally discourage discourage competition. We said it. But if you look also at the condition for the use of restricted tender, you'll realize that the condition, for example, may include things like specialized areas, may include, like the one you have just quoted, limited suppliers that are known to you. If that is the case, you are expected to invite all those limited suppliers that are known to you, but not necessarily one. Let's say, for example, vehicles. You have Saibin, Amadi, TK Motors, Espas, etc. You are expected to invite all the brands to compete, not necessarily targeting one particular brand.
Okay.
Yes.
Just to follow up on the earlier question raised by Madam Chairperson, I'm just wondering, why do you think the preference for single sourcing is more commonly used by LG, local government authorities? Is it because of time? Is it because of urgency? If it is urgency, then everything must be urgent. Why do you think there is that preference for them to be using single sourcing? From your own perspective.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Because the word I used was the most commonly used method. However, it is very clear that there are conditions, once met, you can use single source. However, we have also seen instances where single source are used when the conditions are not met. So most of the explanation given for the use of single source, most of the explanation given from our review is urgency, urgency, urgency. And yesterday I said, when you are dealing with urgency, there are things that you looked at so that it helps you to determine what urgency really is.
As a follow-up, you can attribute that to poor planning.
To a very great extent, yes.
Not only poor planning, in addition to Commissioner Joyner's concerns, what will you say to the suggestion that perhaps single sourcing is much more, has a higher risk of biasness, of fraudulent activities, and corrupt practices than the others?
I think it depends on the angle you coming from. Like we must recognize the fact that single source is also an acceptable procurement method.
No, not there. Let me comment. There, you have highlighted, you have mentioned the acceptable methods of procurement. Single sourcing is an acceptable legal method of procurement.
Exactly.
We have gone past that. But then you said it is a least desired method. Or did you not say that? Now come back again. Why is it the least desired?
It is the least desired method simply because it does not encourage, it does not promote one of the fundamental principles of procurement, which is competition, one. Secondly, it is very difficult to determine value for money, whether the prices are realistic within the market price, etc., because you are unable to compare. You are only dealing with a particular supplier. Based on these things, of course, among others, that's why it is one of the most least desired methods.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why I said, that's why I'm now trying to give you one of the, to tell you that one of the reasons why it is in fact the least desired, based on your explanation, is that for the other methods, for example, tendering, we spoke about the fact that even the bidding must be in a secure place and so on and so forth. The idea, we all know that you will not share information. All of these guidelines, in addition to any other important factor, is also geared towards making sure that you minimize corrupt practices or fraudulent activities in procurement activities. Is that not correct?
Yeah, the purpose of all these checks is to ensure that there is minimal violation of the law.
Violation, by violation you mean, or is it part, is fraudulent activities part of the violations as per the procurement act or regulation?
Yeah, violations may not necessarily constitute fraudulent activities.
But can it constitute fraudulent activities?
Yes, there are certain violations, they can be interpreted as fraudulent.
Is there a possibility of fraudulent activity in any procurement method?
Yes, Council.
Which one is much more secure? Or which one is the least secure?
The least secure in terms of violations?
Yes.
Council, it may be very speculative.
Which one is the least desired?
Desired method, the single source.
Exactly. So now, let's now move to page 15. Again, we discussed the contracts committee.
Yes, Council.
For the year 2020, the members of the committee, can you please tell us who the members are of the contracts committee?
As per the report here, the members, I think we mentioned this before. Mrs. Senabu Martin Sonko,
yes,
CEO. Mr. Abdullah Kebe, Vice Chairman. Mrs. Fatumata Saho Cham, Procurement Manager. Mrs. Binta Jane Jalo, Councillor. Mr. Musa Ba, Deputy Mayor. Dr. Aliu Keta, Director of Finance. Mrs. Nima Kamara, Director of Planning and Development. Lamin Sanyang, Director of Services. And Mr. Usman Gay, Clerk of Council.
And in this year, on page 15, there were again repeated instances wherein the contracts committee were not comply with certain regulations.
Yes, Council.
Yes, similar to the findings of in 2019.
Exactly so.
One of the issues are that they don't generate evaluation report for most of the evaluations conducted during the period under review.
So.
This was also a problem in 2019.
So.
And I believe you must have sent them a report to highlight some of these findings.
Yes.
And it occurred again in the year 2020.
So.
And again, there was no annual procurement plan submitted to the authority.
So.
Now, you also noted some implications with respect to the non-compliance practices by the contracts committee in 2020, which are substantially similar to 2019.
Yes.
What are these implications?
Basically, as I said before, just make some reference to certain implications, but fundamentally, if there are no evaluation criteria, if there is no evaluation report, because one of the fundamental aim of procurement is to have results, and the result is to finally make an award decision, and this award decision should be based on evaluation criteria to determine responsiveness, to ensure that your award decisions are in line with laid down requirements. So if this is absent, the question is, where did you base your award decision? Yeah, it may be very discretionary in nature. So that's the concern.
Now, on page 19, there is a table that you usually draw. We have seen in the past reviews conducted in probably all the area councils.
Page 19?
Yes, where you have the total procurement proceedings and their values for the year ended 31st December 2020.
Okay.
And for restricted tendering, you have one transaction. The value is $2,496,000. The dollars is.
Yeah.
Is that correct? The amount?
Yes.
This for single sourcing, 247 transactions were conducted in that year.
Yes.
And the value is $14,292,023.44.
Yes.
And for the RFQ, request for quotation, there are 164 transactions.
Yes.
And the value is $17,641,624.09.
Yes.
The total for the post-review, the value for the post-review alone is $34,429,747.53 bututs.
Yes.
But you made some recommendations.
Yes.
When you illustrated this table, and when you found out with respect to the amount of single sourcing that was conducted in the year 20, in the year on a review 2020.
20 years.
Now, what were the recommendations?
Basically,
can you please read the recommendations first, and then you can now explain to us?
the recommendation is as thus. We recommend KMC to subject their procurement to competition to achieve value for money.
No, please first start with the point just above the recommendation.
Okay, that's analysis.
That is an analysis.
Yes, yes. An analysis of the 2020 procurement transactions on the various procurement methods indicates that most of the POs, that's procuring organizations, procurement, in this case KMC, is 60% is carried out through single source procurement methods at a value of 42%, which is the least advised method to use.
Yes. This brings us back to the point that we discussions we had. Whenever you see in your reviews, your procurement review, that single sourcing is actually really on the high side, most of the times you advise that, hey, look, this is not really advisable. We don't encourage that you use single sourcing for most of your transactions. And that is what happened in this situation. Am I correct?
Yes, we advise that there shouldn't be unnecessary use of single source.
Yes.
Because sometimes, let's say, if it is within the threshold, because if you look at the statistic here, let's say the total number of single source, 247.
Yes.
That's the total number of single source, 247. Compare it to the value.
What is the value?
The value here is 14.2 million.
Yes.
Approximately 14.2 million.
Yes.
Compared to the number of transactions, you'll come to realize that there is a big possibility that some of the transactions were within the threshold. If you should take an average,
yes,
you come to realize that. Because sometimes you may see a particular procurement method, let's say even RT alone, the value could be more than this. You can see open tender L1, the value could be more than this. That doesn't suggest in any way that it is the best method. All I want to say, I just want to have a caveat that looking at the number of transactions, 200 plus versus the value, there is a possibility, a suggestion that some of the amount involved could have been within the
naturally.
Yes,
naturally.
Yeah,
and we agree on that. Yes. We have already agreed on the fact that single sourcing is a legitimate legal way of procuring goods or services. But then for every procurement method, you have run us through the fact that there are different sets of requirements.
Exactly.
As to why you should use a particular procurement method.
Exactly.
And one of these requirements has to do with the threshold,
yes,
of the amount of money, of value, of the goods or services you are trying to purchase.
Exactly.
And so, again, remind us, the maximum for single sourcing is?
For goods and services,
yes,
is 20,000.
Exactly.
Works $50,000.
$50,000. Yeah. So, but then you again mentioned that you caution, in fact, I will say that this is the least advised method, and therefore you in effect are encouraging or try to flag that perhaps the institution should resort to a more preferred method.
Yes, and let me expand this a little bit. That's the basis for our advice, and that's the basis for our encouragement to institution. Despite the fact that you have satisfied the threshold, let's say 20,000, if you want to buy anything, even if it is below the threshold, even if it is 10,000, the law did not stop you from even collecting different quotations. You can buy something within the threshold for single source, less than the threshold for single source, and you have the right to single source. But the law has not stopped you from collecting 3, 4, 5 quotations just for quality assurance, just to ensure what you are doing, you can have a comparison issues. So these were the basis for our advice.
Now, so your recommendation, which is your advice, is that you recommend KMC to subject their procurement to competition to achieve the value for money. Now let's discuss about the importance of achieving value for money, very briefly. When you say to achieve the value for money, what are you trying to depict here?
This term is a very dicey terminology, and it's difficult to understand if you don't use it in a context.
Yes.
However, for the sake of ease of understanding, basically it's ensuring that whatever you are buying is fit for the purpose. You use public funds to buy something for a reason. That is fit for purpose. Ensure that what you are buying is within the prices of the market range. That's why we always encourage procurement organizations, procurement managers to always go in for market research, market surveys, window shopping, etc., to ensure whatever they are buying falls within the market range. Once these things are done, the conclusion is there is economy in the procurement process,